Hi, welcome to Jet Radio. I'm Ted Shire, your host, and with us today is Stephen Lauer. He is the program manager for the World Food Prize. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Jet Radio is dedicated to community service as a means of sustainability, and we've got the Hunger Summit coming up here pretty quick that is sponsored by the World Food Prize. Stephen, could you tell us a little bit about the Hunger Summit, but first introduce yourself and your background?
Sure. So, like you said, my name's Stephen Lauer. I've been at the World Food Prize on staff for about 2 years. Before then, I was a volunteer during my graduate studies at Iowa State. I have a master's degree in sustainable agriculture and community planning from Iowa State. My bachelor's degrees are in biology and environmental policy from Drake here in Des Moines. So I've been involved in agriculture and development issues for about a decade now.
Yeah. Yeah, and tell us about the World Food Prize and the Hunger Summit coming up here.
Sure. So the World Food Prize started the Iowa Hunger Summit in 2007 as a way to kick off our annual week of events. The focus of the Hunger Summit is on Iowans and what Iowans are doing to fight hunger at home and abroad. So this year that'll be on Tuesday, October 13th. It's free and open to the public, and we have annually around 600 people from all across the state and some of the adjoining states who, just come to focus on hunger and sharing what solutions are out there on the community level and really lifting up the work that is being done already.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of your favorite past Hunger Summits and dialogues?
Sure. So the Iowa Hunger Summit, I'd have to say some of my favorite experiences there would be when we have the kids come and interact with our high-level speakers. So we've had, for the past 7 years, elementary and high school students come in for the Hunger Summit. They usually do a meal packaging event early in the day, and then on the luncheon they get to see some really high-level folks, who come in from the United States or internationally. One example would be in 2013. We had Magnus McFarlane Barrow. It was our keynote speaker at the Hunger Luncheon. He's a Scottish fisherman who, it was 10 years ago then, founded an organization called Mary's Meals, which is dedicated to school feeding programs and alleviating hunger around the world. He flew in from Scotland. And there's a really nice picture of some of the kids from some of the parochial schools in town that had actually done fundraisers for his organization that were able to meet him in person. Then, just a neat example of how Iowans are really at the forefront of a lot of these global issues, and it's an opportunity for that to be recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. So has it always been kind of a mix of nonprofit and business leaders? Because we had Monsanto with Robert Fraley a few years ago, and can you tell us kind of about the balance? Do you intentionally balance the different sectors of society?
Mm-hmm. So our goal with all of our programs is to build a space for discussion that's broadly inclusive, and that includes, as you're saying, corporations, nonprofits, leaders in government, academia, smallholder farmers. We always bring in farmers from the United States and around the world, because we believe that everybody has certainly perspectives and expertise that can and should be shared. And so yes, the Borlaug Dialogue itself is named after our founder, Norman Borlaug, who's an Iowan from Cresco in northeast Iowa, who is credited with saving more lives than any other person who's ever lived. And he did that as a wheat breeder, using just conventional Mendelian genetics. So nothing fancy in his day. He was able to produce varieties of wheat that staved off famine in India and Pakistan and Central America, and it's credited with saving about 1 billion lives from starvation.
Yeah.
He founded the Dialogue as a way to continue the conversations and invite the next generation into the field. So a lot of our work in the Borlaug Dialogue and now with the newer Iowa Hunger Summit focuses on that mission.
Yeah. And just kind of compare and contrast for a minute the dialogue and the Hunger Summit, because on the dialogue side of things, you invite all these international speakers in, and then on the Hunger Summit side of things, isn't that more of a local focus? Kind of explain that to us.
Yes. Yep. So the Iowa Hunger Summit always takes place on the Tuesday of our week of events to kick off the week. And it focuses on what Iowans are doing to fight hunger at home and abroad. So many of the speakers there are from Iowan organizations, nonprofits, corporations, concerned individuals, whereas the dialogue takes place on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week. And it's focused internationally on sort of the, how are we going to, as a global society, meet the challenge of feeding everyone, all 9 billion people who are going to be on our planet in 2050. And furthermore, how are we going to do that in a way that's both healthy and sustainable? And so those are our big challenges, and we try to invite broad perspectives because, we don't see how those challenges can be met without everyone at the table doing their part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what are some of the conversations you remember the most from the dialogue? You must have met many different international leaders.
Yes, well, and of course, one thing to remember is, as staff, we're all very tired and just trying to make sure everything runs smoothly. But that said, I do have some powerful memories. One would be one of our laureates, World Food Prize laureates, Per Pinstrup Andersen. He's an economist from Denmark originally, who really spent his career at the Food Policy Research Institute. He got up and spoke to a group of our high school students who came to the Borlaug Dialogue. So I'd mentioned before, we have students come to the Hunger Summit. We also have students come to the dialogue every year. And he basically laid out the case for why everybody needs to be involved with hunger. And one of the things that I just remember from that is the response from the students, because these are kids who'd been sitting through these high-level discussions, and now the challenge is being thrown directly to each and every one of them. So then we have kids go back and share that with their schools, and I would say, if I'm allowed one more, mm-hmm. I'd say another really powerful event at a Borlaug Dialogue would have been in 2013. We had Cardinal Turkson from the Vatican come. He's originally from Ghana, and he addressed a luncheon room of about 1,000 to 1,200 folks, talking about the sort of morality of science, and from the Catholic Church's perspective, the importance of pursuing science, but always with the aim of uplifting the human person and respecting the dignity of humanity. And the part that's really powerful about his remarks is, he was really able to bring together folks who disagree a lot about what forms of technology are appropriate for agriculture. Whether genetic modification is a good idea, or whether approaches should be much more organic. We have folks with experts with a diversity of opinions, and his message of the solutions always needing to take into account human dignity brought everybody together. So that was really powerful.
Yeah. Now you stimulated a couple of follow-up questions there, but with that issue of GMOs, mm-hmm. I mean, that was interesting that Monsanto was one of the winners, recently. And I come from a science background. I have a PhD in molecular biology, but I've followed Monsanto's work a little bit, and it was great to see kind of the scientific perspective there as well, because there is so much kind of pushback on the GMO issue. But do you feel like the world can feed 9 billion people without advances in science and without GMOs?
Well, first, just a point of clarification, the World Food Prize always goes to an individual. And so in 2013, the year that you're talking about, it went to 3 individual scientists, one of whom, Robert Fraley, is now a senior executive at Monsanto. And so while he did his work at Monsanto, the award was made to him and 2 others as individuals.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But to get to your question, I think the question of advances in science and technology is one that I would say individually, and I'm sure most folks at the dialogues would say is really an important. Science technology is an important part of a solution to healthily and sustainably feed the 9 billion people that will be on our planet in really only the next 40 years. The question of genetic modification in particular is more heavily debated, and we have experts who've believe many different things on that. I think that speaking from my personal perspective, I think that genetic modification is, one of probably 4 or 5 tools that we can use in combination to reach that goal.
Yeah.
So, can I think of a way to do it without GMOs? Well, not being an expert, it's hard for me to say. I imagine there are ways to do it that would not involve them. But, then the question just becomes, as a society, really a global society, and with the needs of the hungry in mind, what combination of technologies are we comfortable with, and are we willing to deploy to fight the challenges that we face?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I know there definitely are some alternatives to GMOs, and by Monsanto actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mean to imply that it was a word to the company. That's just
Sure.
kind of what came to my mind first. But with Monsanto's precision agriculture, they're able just through an analysis of spacing and depth requirements of the seeds to maximize yields just based on a study of planting procedures, and they see incredible increases in yield. I don't want to quote the numbers offhand, but it's I think in some cases it's up to around 50%. We have to check that against the literature, but it's so there's definitely ways to do it without modifying. But I think the perspective of scientists is that they're familiar with how rigorous the testing is that goes into examining a GMO. And so, yeah, there are unexpected things that happen, and we definitely need to be careful. But when it comes down to a choice between feeding, hungry mouths and concerns over things that might happen, if we've taken a certain level of rigor in ensuring safety, then in some cases, in most cases, probably the good outweighs the bad. But I don't know if you have any further comment on that.
Well, I'd just like to, actually, the words of our founder, Norman Borlaug, come to mind. And he was speaking about his advances in wheat breeding, which, again, he didn't have the tools to be able to use genetic modification for that. So his crops, his varieties are not genetically modified. But, he responded to some of the people who were really questioning and in some cases criticizing his work. And he said that the Green Revolution, or the technologies that he'd helped develop, he would rather deal with the new problems arising from that approach than continue to deal with the really age-old problem of people starving to death. So he was a big believer in confronting, and he recognized there are challenges with new technologies, there are challenges with new systems of farming, and those are real and need to be addressed. He would always attempt to remind people that when you've got to compare those challenges to the challenges of hunger and malnutrition, and really think hard before writing anything off, before looking at it.
Sure. Yeah. So with the Hunger Summit coming up here, what would someone coming for the first time, how would they benefit, and who are some of your first-time newcomers?
Well, so I would say our Hunger Summit audience, if you will, is about a third people who work directly with hunger for their jobs. That might be at a food bank or a food pantry, or it might be with government organization or corporate social responsibility group. There's a diversity of ways. About a third are people whose occupations are elsewhere, but who dedicate a large portion of their personal time volunteering on hunger issues. So we have a lot of people from a faith perspective, a lot of folks who, for one reason or another, really care about hungry people, and even though their jobs may be elsewhere, it's important. And then the other third is people like you say, who are maybe just coming for the first time. We have a sizable group of young people and retirees who maybe are trying to figure out their occupation, or who have put in a lifetime of work and are really looking for what to do with the time that's opening up in their lives.
Oh, that's excellent.
And so I would say somebody coming in for the first time, just expect a lot of diversity, a lot of diverse perspectives, and a lot of other people who care about feeding hungry people, here in our communities and everywhere.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I think those are some of the best groups to come. The retirement generation has such a lifetime of experience that they can offer, and in many cases resources and time that they can offer back to the community. So that's great feedback there. We're going to go to our first break here, but let's continue with this conversation when we come back. And again, Stephen Lauer is our guest today, and he is the program manager for the World Food Prize. Thanks for joining us today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
if you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Hi, welcome back to Jet Radio. I'm Ted Shire, your host, and with us today is Stephen Lauer. He is the program coordinator for the World Food Prize. Welcome back, Stephen.
Thank you.
So when we left off, we were talking about some of the groups that come to the Hunger Summit for the first time, and those include young people and those of the retirement generation, and kind of the bookends of society there. And the older generation has a lifetime experience to offer, and then the younger generation needs experience, and so volunteering is a great way for them to get that experience that they need. Stephen, when you shared the story before of the classroom response to the speaker, can you explain that in a little bit more detail? What was it about that struck you?
Well, I think it's hard to explain to folks, if you've not been there, but it's really neat to see, students realizing that something that's maybe a very broad issue, touches on a lot of different things in the world, is something that can be important to them personally. I think, there was another speaker who talked about, imagining the world as sort of a banqueting table, and right now in the United States, people, we're kind of at the head of the table. We have a great deal of power and influence in the world that we can, if we choose, use to help make sure that everybody gets a fair portion. And that might not last forever. We certainly, of course, in America, we hope that it does, but there's no guarantee. And so we really need to seize the moment and, make these types of contributions in the world and in our own communities. And I think that the ability to say something like that, but then for a student to think, oh, I can bring this back to my classmates, and we can host hunger banquets or experiential events that help raise awareness, or we can. There's a lot of opportunities for students to volunteer in food pantries, community gardens, places locally that can contribute to the challenges that we're facing in our own communities, and certainly another way is through our World Food Prize youth programs, where we engage. Again, we focus mostly on the high school level, engage students in really exploring an issue of hunger in another country in depth, and proposing solutions to based on their research.
Yeah.
And I think it's true with any age group. The moment when you move from seeing a issue as something overwhelming to seeing it as something that you personally can play a part in, it's just a really powerful thing. Really, and then to not do that alone, right? But to have that realization, in a room where other people are having that realization, maybe for the first time, maybe they're rediscovering it. I think that's, again, it's hard to explain or break it down step by step how it happens, but other than just to say that it does, and it's amazing to see.
No, that was well said, actually. So there's awareness, there's expanded volunteering. Have any of the stories come back to you in terms of students deciding to pursue a career path?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are some of those?
So there's a young woman, Maria Belding, who is originally from Pella, Iowa, who's working with a student from West Des Moines who went to Dowling Catholic High School. And together they're now on the East Coast. But Maria came through all of our youth programs, and the other gentleman, now I'm struggling to remember his name, he participated in some of our events. The two of them have won some prestigious MIT Business Awards for a platform that is looking at connecting food pantries together. And they're working with the Feeding America Association of Food Banks to figure out how best to roll that out nationwide. But those are two people who were, obviously intelligent, high-powered people to begin with, who just saw through our programs an opportunity for them specifically to become involved and who've run with it. Mm-hmm. Another example would be we have some students who are pursuing careers, in there's a woman who's now working as a large animal vet, finishing up that program up at Iowa State, who again, grew up on a farm, was always interested in agriculture, but now is seeing this as an opportunity for her to make a difference globally. I believe that she's recently gone back to Kenya to work with livestock among pastoralists who, it's more than a livelihood for them. It's the difference between feeding your kids or not. Those are some examples, and there's certainly many more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us about some of your specific youth programs, the names of those programs, and then what they do.
Sure, and I'll focus on opportunities for Iowans. So we have our Iowa Youth Institute, which takes place every spring at Iowa State University, and that it involves about 250 students and their teachers who come onto campus for a day-long event where they present a paper that each of them is, again, looking at issue of hunger in another country. They present a paper they've researched. They talk with other students and with ISU faculty, with the business community. We typically have, actually every year so far, we've had Governor Branstad, who's come and addressed the group. And then, the other half of the day, when they're not doing the presentations, they're actually having experiences on campus. They get to select, a field that might be of interest to them, and look in more depth. So we have students going out to the aquaponics lab, or going to the meat science lab, or looking at global languages, things like that. So that's kind of the gateway into our programs for Iowa students. From there, we're able to bring many of those students to our events in the fall, and so they come to what we call the Global Youth Institute, because we bring in students from other states and other countries as well, and to sit in on some of the sessions at the Borlaug Dialogue, present their papers again, this time with, we still have some Iowa State faculty, but we've got national and international level experts as well, talking about their papers, talking about what each student can do with the knowledge and skills that they've developed. By the time you're in high school, you actually, think about it, you do have a lot of life experience that can be brought to bear. We have 2 internship programs also. One is an international internship, the Borlaug Ruan International Internship, and that program sends students for an 8-week, all expenses paid, working internship at an international agricultural development organization. We place students in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Latin America. Safety is, of course, always the number one priority, and so, there's countries, Egypt, for example. I was actually able to participate in that program in high school and went to Egypt back in 2006. Well, we don't send to Egypt anymore, given the recent history, and just want to make sure that people are safe. Then our fourth youth program, second internship program, is the Wallace Carver Fellowship. It's a partnership with USDA, and we help bring students. You have to apply for the for the positions with USDA just like anybody else, but we help recruit, and students who are accepted through this program are able to attend a week-long leadership training in Washington, D.C., and historically, again, every year so far, I've been able to meet with Secretary Vilsack and other leaders in government.
Yeah. And what are when they come back and talk about their experience, what do they say, particularly in that last opportunity?
So our president, Ambassador Quinn, he for the international one, he tells the parents to, look real hard at your kid before they go, because they're not going to come back the same person. And it's really true. People, well, I guess I can speak for myself, my experience, and I'm sure it's similar to many folks, is, one of going over and seeing how hard people are working, and how they're maybe just barely getting by, which of course, that happens everywhere. You could go somewhere in the United States and see that too. But to be working alongside, scientists and, economists and, policymakers who are really dedicating their careers to addressing it, kind of gives it a different spin, and so we have students come back and, they become active on college campuses, and they, I guess, dedicate their, studies and careers to making a difference in the world.
Yeah. So there's the outreach to students, and outreach to the community through this week-long dialogue and Hunger Summit. Are there other types of outreach that the World Food Prize would like to do in terms of, reaching out to business or nonprofits like Meals from the Heartland, things like that? What are your thoughts there?
We do have a couple other outreach programs in addition to our youth programs and our event-based programs. We do outreach to businesses and nonprofits in Iowa through our Iowa Hunger Directory, which is it's a website, and what we try to do through that is to facilitate networking and collaboration among organizations that are fighting hunger, either in Iowa or elsewhere, but involving Iowans in the fight. Meals from the Heartland is one of our very first members in the directory. We have all the food banks in Iowa. We have a wide cross section of the business community. I think more and more it's being recognized outside of the folks who have always known, right? But it's being more broadly recognized that hunger is an issue that hurts communities. It hurts individuals who are suffering. It hurts the families, but it hurts our communities. And of course, in a state like Iowa, if anybody can end hunger, we can end hunger, and that's just something that the World Food Prize can play a part by helping the networking, facilitating the networking. We ourselves we don't directly provide food to the hungry, or that's not our role. There's organizations that specialize in that and do a very good job of that. Our role is to celebrate and inspire achievements against hunger and help network the community that's working on this.
Sure. What about media outreach? Do you make a significant effort to get the word out beyond Iowa?
We do, yes. We always announce our laureate or laureates. Up to 3 individuals can win the prize every year. We announce them in Washington, D.C., in part so that the Secretary of State can make the announcement. And we've been very grateful to have that happen many years, but also because we reach a different audience. There's national media that are located in D.C. and are able to share those stories with different groups than we might have if we were to do the announcement in Iowa.
Sure.
We're working with an international media group out of the United Kingdom this year, who's helping to share the stories more broadly that are will be coming out of the dialogue. A major focus of the dialogue this year is on education for women and girls, particularly STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And that's everything from, it's just a confluence of factors. Our laureate this year, Sir Fazal Abed, founded the largest non-governmental organization in the world, the Bangladesh, it's BRAC now, BRAC, Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee. It's now just known by the acronym. He founded that back in the 1970s with a early focus on reaching out to women and girls who so often are not reached out to or are discriminated against in so many societies around the world. We have speakers, I was telling you earlier, we have Chelsea Clinton from the Clinton Foundation. We have Cheryl Wu Dunn, who's worked extensively with Nicholas Kristof on sort of sharing the message of education for women and girls, and just how important that is. And because that is a global issue, and one that's time has really come, we've been working pretty extensively with some new media groups to spread that message around the world.
Sure. And how far in advance do you plan the coming summits?
Planning for 2016 has already begun. I'm not directly involved with the early stages of invitations. Ambassador Quinn, of course, as our president, is very active in that, and I have colleagues who work with him closely. I believe there's people that we're trying to invite for 2017 already, because so much of it, we bring in such high-level experts that it might take a couple years before they're able to find time in their schedule to attend.
Right.
So yeah, I could tell you that planning for next year has already begun.
Sure. You've got a nice platform there. So just curious about strategy. If you've got that effective platform, could you use it to plan, say 10 years in advance and say, hey, we're going to cover subjects X, Y, and Z and elsewhere and fit them together in a particular order in order to accomplish, such and such higher goal. What are your thoughts about kind of long-term strategic planning?
Well, it's, I understand the approach that you're describing. It's really not the approach that we take for a couple of reasons. And one is that we really do try to be the platform, and that involves a certain amount of openness to ideas and diversity. And, we need to remember, too, that some of the things that we're talking about now, people didn't think about 10 years ago. So
you want to remain open to current events type happenings?
Yes, and to the innovations that just continue to happen around the world as well. Nobody could have predicted that Ebola would be such an important, really issue last year in Western Africa, and yet we were able to pivot partway through the year and highlight the role of epidemics and on agriculture. Obviously, when people are sick or are changing their daily behaviors to try to avoid becoming sick, that has an impact on their ability to feed their families. Another thing we saw in some of those countries is transportation systems breaking down because people were not allowed to travel, and so then if the people couldn't travel, the food couldn't travel. That's something that really I don't know if it's fair to say nobody was thinking about, but it was not on the radar before partway through last year.
Sure.
And I think there's certainly value in a long-term strategy of putting different issues together. Our approach has been more about keeping our very general focus and allowing the most timely issues to rise up organically, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no advantages to that too. Mm-hmm. So with us today is Stephen Lauer. He is the program coordinator for the World Food Prize. And when we come back, we'll be discussing issues related to hunger and sustainability. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, welcome back to Jet Radio. I'm Ted Shire, your host, and with us today is Stephen Lauer. He is the program coordinator for the World Food Prize. Welcome back, Stephen.
Thank you, Ted.
So, hey, just want to continue with the Borlaug dialogue here. So, want to read a couple of things here from the fundamentals of global food security. So it says discussion topics and highlights of the program will include, and some of the bullet points here are restoring soils and a focus on their foundational role in achieving global food security, and the role of precision agriculture, data and information technologies in production, conservation, and resilience. So can you kind of expand on those two topics and just tell us a little bit about what the World Food Prize would like to do in terms of soil sustainability, precision agriculture, things related to those topics?
Sure. And, you know, a big part of what we're looking at there is focused mostly on the developing world, on situations that are facing farmers who may farm, 2 acres to 10 acres of land. It's usually, in many countries, it's the women who are doing this farming. And you know, in Iowa, we talk a lot about nutrient management and maybe how best to apply fertilizers. In other countries, sometimes the question is, can they afford fertilizers? Are fertilizers even accessible? Which brings a whole another set of challenges in terms of feeding your crops. So we have a panel that will be chaired by Howard G. Buffett, whose foundation has really made it a priority to scale up solutions that are proven effective in different parts of the world to help farmers manage their soil to be able to continue producing healthy food for their families.
Yeah, and what does he do?
Well, so he's a foundation, and so they give money to help scale up solutions. I think I can speak extensively on one piece of what they do, just because we've been able to help them with that particular piece, and that's they have a 40 Chances program, which is based on a book that he's written, and actually the concept he spoke about at our Hunger Summit in 2012. The basic concept is as a farmer, in addition to running the foundation, he's a farmer in Nebraska and Illinois. You have about 40 seasons to try to get the best crop you can get, and you maybe you can fail some of them. You don't want to fail too many times. And just the idea that our opportunities to make a difference are time bound, and so part of this 40 Chances program is a program he has for 4 young social entrepreneurs in 4 countries in Africa. And his foundation is providing these 4 individuals with funding to help them grow their it's a social enterprise model of business. And so I know quite a bit about that because the World Food Prize and Tony Blair's Africa Governance Initiative were approached to be partners in helping his foundation select the 4 individuals to receive his grants. And we have a young man from Liberia. His name is Mahmoud Johnson, who is doing a lot of work with oil palm. And oil palm is people might have heard of. I'm sure many of us have heard of palm oil and how that can be an ingredient in foods and soaps and various other consumer items. In Liberia, they're recovering from decades of civil war, and they're a tropical country. Many farmers can grow oil palms. What he's looking at is when we talk about palm oil, that's the fruit, and inside the fruit there's a nut, the palm kernel, and palm kernel oil is more difficult to process, and many of the farmers in Liberia don't have the equipment or ability to do that. So his business is investing in processing basically the nuts of, if you think of palm fruit as a fruit, the insides. And he's basically trying to take what's currently being wasted and make it into an additional source of revenue for farmers who, many of them are only barely getting by, and so can really appreciate all the additional revenue they can get. That ties into something like soil health, which was what we were originally talking about, in a couple ways. One is by having a source of marketable income, right? Many of these farmers focus primarily on growing, corn or beans or things that their families can eat directly. The challenge there, though, is they need to buy medicine or they need to pay for books for their kids. There's other things that you need cash to be able to do. By providing, something like a palm tree is perennial. It stays, it's rooted in the soil for many years if you take care of it. And by having that as a source of cash, then you don't have to work the fields of corn and beans so hard. You can allow those fields to rest, and you can, perhaps accept slightly lower yields in the short term to save yield potential in the long term. And so that's an example of how something that's seemingly totally disconnected from soil health, it really can be intimately connected to that issue.
Yeah, no, that's totally relevant. We used to have the payment in kind program that would allow the soil to rest here, but continuous cultivation is a concern.
It comes with a lot of challenges, and you got to remember that in Liberia, farmers there don't have access to the tools that farmers here do. They can't afford the same levels of fertilizers, and they can't afford the same levels of pesticides and herbicides and other things that allow farmers here to crop our land pretty much continuously.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of there's studies out there that are there's a scientist at University of Wisconsin Green Bay that studied lowering of nutrient levels as a result of nutrient losses in the soil. And when you being closer to the information, I guess, than most people, do you hear things about what's going on around the world in terms of nutrient losses in crops because of the soil depletion?
Yes, and what we tend to hear most often is related to soils in Africa, and I think that's for a couple of reasons. One is that the soils in Africa geologically are very old, which means they started off with a lower level of nutrients in general to begin with. Then, the soils in Iowa are 10,000 years old. They're formed after the glaciers. We're really blessed with amazing soils here. They haven't had a couple million years for nutrients to wash out of. And a phrase that comes up repeatedly is nutrient mining. And so if you think about, something like farming, the idea is it's supposed to be a situation where, by and large, what you remove from the soil is roughly equal to what the soil is capable of regenerating, right? But you think about something like mining, if you're mining, coal or oil, we understand that part of that is you're extracting and it's not being replenished, and that's a different way of thinking. Obviously applying that to farming, particularly when, your family's right about subsistence level, you don't want to be mining your soils. And we do, over time, there are studies that show the nutrient content of the foods is reduced because the plants are, they're not healthy, they're struggling to survive. Other areas you have people who are really focused on animal agriculture, either because, maybe the land that they have is better suited to grazing animals than it is to cropping, or another thing that we see a lot is farmers who mix cattle or chickens or pigs with crop farming, and of course we see some of that. We see quite a bit of that in Iowa too. We have farmers who raise corn and beans and have hogs on the side. But there's a huge issue in many parts of the world in terms of being able to get enough protein in the diet, particularly animal protein. If the soils are not being, if they're not healthy because people have not been able to farm them in a way that they continue to produce, then your animals aren't going to be healthy either. And ultimately, if you're farming animals, you need your animals to be healthy. So that impacts then on human health. Mm-hmm. One interesting, actually, to come back to the 40 Chances program, if I may, there's another person who's working in Sierra Leone, which is another country in Western Africa. Like Liberia, it was also hit recently with the Ebola epidemic. There's a gentleman working there on basically trying to integrate soybeans into their rice farming system. And that had been, soybeans have been shown to be a successful component on research farms, but they've not actually been, people have not yet grown them on a large scale on, real farms. And of course that's, something can do fine in the lab or in a research plot and be a failure in the field. So it's really important that somebody figure out, make sure that, yes, this shows academic promise and yes, it actually works. The neat part about soybeans is, they help replenish nitrogen in the soil, which is one of the nutrients that is most commonly exhausted through, overcropping and of course you got to remember too, it's not that the farmers, they're not dumb and they're not greedy. They don't have access necessarily to the tools that they would need to farm sustainably. And so his 40 Chances business is, the business is taking on the risk of figuring out if soybeans work. Mm-hmm. And if they do, then not only does the business make a profit, but he's contracting with, smallholder farmers in a district of the country, and they'll see the benefit too. Mm-hmm. if it fails, then the business takes the hit and the farmers don't, which is just an example. That's why I imagine that's one of the reasons why the Buffett Foundation wanted to fund it is they really are looking at how do you scale up a promising solution, and of course not putting the livelihoods of people who are barely getting by on the line.
Yeah, no, those are good thoughts. What are your thoughts on crops like golden rice that have been engineered to have nutrients in them? Are those? Is there a problem with those being accepted on the local level, or what are some of the issues there?
Well, I mean, we've certainly seen a problem with those being accepted, and of course, I'm not the expert. This is just based on me, reading what different experts are saying. Golden rice was developed first in, I believe, 2001, and it's yet to see. It's yet to be commercially released in I think any country. I think the Philippines is the closest. And that's a long time for it to have been on the been sort of on the shelves in reserve and not be in people's hands. And of course, people who come to our events, people in general, have diverse perspectives on, is something like golden rice a good idea? Is it a good idea that it's been sort of sitting in a lab somewhere for all these years? But I think it's fair to say that the potential there has not been realized. What we're focusing on actually in our symposium, we have a panel this year that's looking at something called orange flesh sweet potato, which of course in the United States, well, of course it's orange. You think about a sweet potato, it's orange. But in many countries, the sweet potatoes that they use are white. And that's just based on the varieties that people have and are used to. But orange, you think about carrots, they're orange. They have a lot of vitamin A, right? Orange flesh sweet potatoes have vitamin A. Golden rice was developed in part to address people who weren't able to get enough vitamin A in their diet. So we've invited 3 of the scientists who have really been instrumental in taking an orange flesh sweet potato and adapting it to the local context. And this is not done with genetic modification. This is all with conventional. We call it conventional breeding, but basically, plants cross-pollinate each other and you select the ones you want. You're not using really any of the advanced genetic tools that we have now. And they're able to do that with the sweet potatoes. And that's avoided a lot of the political controversy that an approach like golden rice has really become ensnared in. Because again, rightly or wrongly, many countries, many people have concerns about a genetic modification approach. So we're inviting these 3 scientists to come on one of our panels and talk about that form. It's called biofortification, but that approach to increasing the vitamin A in farmers' diets, just through small changes in the types of crops that they grow. And of course, it takes a long time to make sure that those small changes are acceptable. It's as in any form of science, you're going to have some changes that you think are small that turn out to be not small at all, and then you've got to go back to the drawing board and all that.
Yeah. And so we're finishing up here. Really appreciate your input and your expertise. If any state could eliminate hunger, wouldn't it be Iowa? And what are your thoughts in terms of how that could practically happen?
Well, I think the first step is that everybody needs to become aware and become involved. And of course, there's so many ways to do that. I would encourage anybody who's able to visit our website, iowahungersummit.org or worldfoodprize.org. There'll be a lot more information and opportunities, on our website for ways that people can plug in and get involved.
Yep. gardening. Any thoughts on gardening?
Absolutely. I should mention too, we've got our Iowa Hunger Directory. It's iowahungerdirectory.org. We've got a whole section of different organizations across the state that promote gardening, either, for your family, for your local food shelf. There's a lot of potential on the food waste front, food rescue. And, on the other hand, looking at sort of economic aspects, there's been, we've talked offline about, the importance of families helping families and family mentorship pieces. And there's some organizations that are trying to get started to do that.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of, looking around, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? And who else is out there that you can team up with?
Yeah.
No,
that's great. Thanks for sharing your perspective today.
All right.
With us today has been Stephen Lauer. He is the program coordinator for the World Food Prize. Thanks for joining us today, and join us again for our continuing discussion on community sustainability.